I gotta be a good booktuber and like hold it for a second to like prove I own the book or something. I don't know. Booktubers do this. The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. Let's get into this one. So I have a weird history with The Rage of Dragons where a while ago I saw its meteoric rise on the r/fantasy subreddit. It got a bunch of hype and buzz, people were praising it and how this author kind of had this come up with it. Self-published, first-time debut novel, really hyped up. And honestly, I just kind of chalked that up to, Reddit's being generous, they just want to hype up this guy's book, and maybe it's good. Doubt it's as good as people say. Certainly not the best debut novel from a fantasy author ever. But then I kept hearing about it. It kept popping up here and there and there and here on my radar, and people kept saying, it's so good. You got to pick up Evan Winter's book. So I finally did. I bumped it way up my TBR. I probably wouldn't have gotten to this for like a year or two if I did not. And I picked up The Rage of Dragons, which I thought was a one-off, but it's actually the first in the series, which is cool to see. I'm actually very excited for that now. And to get into my spoiler-free review here, as much as I did not like Wizard's First Rule is how much I like The Rage of Dragons. I am so insanely impressed by what was crafted here. I have a very hard time believing this is a debut novel because it shows a lot of experience and knowledge of the fantasy genre to craft a story that is this respectful of fantasy, this knowledgeable of fantasy, and yet avoids so many of the fantasy genre's continual shortcomings. On top of that, Evan Winters wrote something here that feels so refreshing, and I'm not just talking about the including of a different setting. It's not Eastern European fantasy feeling, it's African-inspired fantasy, with definitely some influences coming back in, though, from European culture, which results in this blend of a setting I've never really seen before. But ignoring that, which is still cool and original and refreshing, Evan Winter's writing is just awesome. This man manages to craft a story that is fast-paced, well-rounded, and doesn't sacrifice nearly anything. There is no weak point to The Rage of Dragons in my mind. The characters are well-realized and kick ass. The plot is super hyper-focused, but also allows time to expand and grow the wider world. Very cool, impressed by that, no doubt. Some people might have a criticism that the magic system's not the most fleshed out of all time, and the world's not the biggest ever, but in the current fantasy trend of just having things being as big and epic and Malazan, Wheel of Time, Stormlight-esque, and just trying to go big, 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 Evan Winters manages to accomplish so much on a level that is near the epic, high-stakes scope of those massive stories while telling a much more intimate and personal story, which I appreciate greatly. Don't get me wrong, the stakes here are still crazy high, and you feel that. It's established. But there aren't just a million side plots going on and all these like characters being injected who feel unnecessary. I have a theory that Evan Winters just had a story he wanted to tell, and he told the out of it. And that story is truly a gold standard. I do not like when it feels like an author had an idea, but just added things on top and mushy padding. There's not really any mushy, fatty padding here. It's a gloriously straight line that is well crafted and rock solid while having necessary information that does grow the world and other characters and things like that sprinkled in, but you never feel like you're just being lollygagged around, which results in the pacing of this story arguably being the best for any fantasy book I have read. This book flew by with me reading it. I picked it up like a week ago, got about 30-40% in, and then after that couldn't put it down, and I finished it in like 2 days because it just reached a point where I had to know, I had to finish it, and it never felt like I needed to take a break. This book is like so good, I'm angry about it because I've like picked up so many other books and put them down that I just didn't enjoy or like as much. I've had kind of a bad luck streak in the last few weeks for books, and I just feel frustrated. Why didn't I pick this one up sooner? This is honestly the first book in ages I want to immediately reread. So yeah, characters, awesome, well-motivated, original, everyone is well-motivated, from heroes to villains, and there are some big bad guys here, but you understand why they're doing what they're doing. No one feels mustache twirlingly, they're just evil for evil. No, you know why everyone's doing what they're doing, and they're justified to an extent. So the story's gold, pacing's crazy good, characters well done across the board. The plot, while being very concise, does grow the world in a larger way. But let's kind of go ahead and get into the most minor spoilers possible, talking about basic setting up story things. But if you're one of these people who's hypersensitive about that, I get it. Link to buy the book in the description down below. Use my Amazon affiliate link. I get a kickback. I really appreciate it. Supports the channel here. Please leave a like and subscribe. Goodbye. Basic mild spoilers here. This is a revenge story. The revenge story takes the driver's seat. There's also a love story that's in the back seat, but we are following a man who is driven to a point of, let's call it, not healthy to get his revenge. He's someone who starts in the lowest of low, and I mean that literally and metaphorically. He has a lot taken from him at the beginning of this story, and he's a part of the lowest part of society, where the point where there's like slurs said about his type of people. We're in a caste system, basically. Not basically. We are in a caste system in this book. And he decides to go and get as close to the people who wronged him as possible, and the lengths he is willing to go to are earned, and again, so nice and refreshing to see a character earn his growing strength, his growing abilities so thoroughly. At no point did the character suddenly just power up without it being well explained or understood within the text why this is happening. Because one, he works his ass off and he fails a lot, which makes a compelling protagonist because he's someone who's not willing to give up. He's someone who can get up, and that is inherently more interesting than most other protagonists being written. If you make him human, if you make him driven, and you just give him a rock solid motivation for that drive to leap off of, you're halfway there with developing your character. But he also has a personality, relationships, all these things that just fill him out. I think his name's Tao. I read this one, and a lot of names were very hard for me to pronounce. Well, it's the Omehi people. Omehi, I believe, and his name's Tao. I think that's right. So just transitioning into the last bit of praise I want to go on here before we go into more heavy spoiler things. It manages to be gritty and real without feeling grotesquely over-the-top grimdark, which is a balance I again appreciate and I think makes it more accessible to everyone without sacrificing anything in terms of quality content. There is no unnecessary things brought in from our own world that just feel ham-fisted or over the top. It does feel like it is placed in its own fully realized, beautiful world. And the conclusion to my spoiler-free section here is that yes, in my opinion, from my experience with the fantasy genre, Evan Winters has crafted the best debut fantasy novel I have come across. I've read a lot of fantasy books. Not all of them I've reviewed here on the channel, but I've read a lot. And damn, from a first effort from an author, this is above Brandon Sanderson's first effort. This is above so many authors' first tries, and those are authors who went on to become legends. So I'm ecstatic to see where this one can go. So getting into, I'm going to say some things that could maybe be considered spoilers. 3, 2, 1 starting now. My expectations were subverted right. That, again, not easy to do, and we are in a golden age of expectations being subverted poorly in very popular examples. Your expectations in terms of who lives, who dies, what's happening, and why are subverted properly with foreshadowing, but not over-the-top foreshadowing. You find out things right as when you should, and all of that accumulates for a satisfying ending that is on a level that I know I will never be able to write an ending as cathartic and satisfying as this one. It left me in awe of what is to come, of what I'm going to see next from this world. Truly just goddamn brilliant. I know people say I'm too harsh on books quite a bit. People think I can be a bit mean. I'm sure I'm going to get comments telling me that I'm being way too positive here, but for me, this is a must-read, best book I've read so far this year, I think, and firmly within my top 10 first fantasy books in a series of all time. It rocks it. It's setting the bar higher for fantasy authors putting out their first novels for years to come. This is the bar now, in my opinion. If you want to be the new best debut fantasy novel I've read, you need to top The Rage of Dragons, because this was just rock solid. I wouldn't change a thing. This is a glowing review. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought of The Rage of Dragons in the comments down below. Like and subscribe if you have not already. This is the first book in ages I feel the need to talk about in spoilers with, so there will be a spoiler chat video in the future as well, I think, because I want to go over in detail what happens in the story and why it works so effectively with the reader. I'll wait a few weeks for that so more of you could read it, but yeah, I gotta do that. I need that now. Hit the Amazon affiliate link if you want to buy it and check out the new merch store. If you want to buy merchandise to support the channel, we got them. I wish I could hold them up because Teespring's still sending me samples, but we'll get them soon. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.